Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Finding Yourself Again, where we focus on hope, healing, and recovery from toxic narcissistic abuse. The ultimate goal is to establish self-love, healthy relationships, and ultimately find yourself. My name's Don Sher. I'm a survivor of toxic abuse from a narcissistic/borderline. If you find these videos to be helpful to you, I ask that you subscribe, like, share, and watch any others on my channel that may be helpful to you. I ain't gonna hold y'all up, so with that being said, let's get into today's video. Alright, man, so as y'all can see, I got another one. I got another little shiesty on, trying to style out for y'all. But no, man, I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. I'm gonna take this drippy shit off so I can get serious with the video. Yeah, like I was saying, man, I hope everybody's having a great morning, a great Wednesday. And today I want to talk about what does active healing look like. Now just a fair warning, this video is gonna go kind of long. I got like 6 pages of things that I'm gonna be talking about here in this video, so you might want to pause halfway, maybe watch half now, half later, or however you want to do it, if you got the time to watch it. But I'm gonna talk about active healing today, everything about active healing, what it looks like, everything. So let's break it down. So I'm gonna give y'all the active healing definition, right? So this is gonna be a deliberate, conscious, and ongoing process of engaging with your emotional, psychological, and sometimes physical wounds to facilitate repair, growth, and transformation. It's not a passive state of waiting for time to mend things, but rather an intentional commitment to understanding, processing, and integrating past painful experiences so they no longer control your present or your future. It involves taking responsibility for your own well-being and actively participating in the journey towards wholeness and self-identity. Wow, man. I mean, this topic, I'm like, this topic is so important, and I know it's gonna resonate with somebody because of how much it resonates with me. And I want whoever watches this video to know that, like, I'm not here to say there's a right or wrong way of healing, right? But I am here to say that there is a more, like, beneficial way to heal for you, depending on whatever you got going on in your personal life, right? Hey, you feel me? So, and yeah, and like I was saying, I just think it's really important to understand that there is a difference between active healing and passive healing. And I'm not encouraging passive healing. We don't do that over here on my channel. We're about actively healing, actively, like, engaging, understanding, processing, integrating, so that's what I want to encourage you guys to do. It's about making a change and not just sitting back and letting time do its thing. I mean, sure, time can mend some things, right? But it's not going to ultimately heal your root traumas and stuff like that. That's for you and your mental health professionals to do. Ultimately, you know what I mean? So the next thing I'm going to talk about is active healing from trauma, neglect, or abuse, especially in relation to toxic, narcissistic relationships or dysfunctional family dynamics. That's kind of a lot, but I had to include everything, so active healing becomes even more crucial right here. And here's how it specifically applies, right? So the first one we're going to talk about is for trauma. Active healing means moving beyond just surviving the traumatic event. It involves consciously processing the memories, emotions, and bodily sensations associated with trauma, often with professional guidance like somatic experience or EMDR. This is about retraining your nervous system to feel safe again and integrating the fragmented parts of your experience, if you could understand that. Very important for trauma. I mean, that's why that's why most of us are here, for this trauma aspect of things. We want to heal that, and that's one of the things that's gonna heal. The next is going to be for neglect. So active healing addresses the void left by emotional or physical neglect. It means consciously learning to reparent yourself, building internal resources for self-comfort and validation, and developing a secure attachment style. That's important. Even if it was absent in early life, it's about actively giving yourself the love, attention, and care that you didn't receive. Very important. For a lot of us, I would say we experience trauma and neglect, especially like people, codependent people and stuff like that. They're, more often than not, we've experienced neglect and trauma, at least one out of the two. All right, so the next thing that is going to be good for is for abuse, and this is including narcissistic abuse. Active healing from abuse, particularly narcissistic abuse, means dismantling the distorted self-perception that was imposed upon you. It involves recognizing the manipulation, gaslighting, and devaluation that you endured, and actively reclaiming your sense of reality and self-worth. It's a journey of reestablishing your identity, learning to trust your own instincts again, and developing strong boundaries to protect yourself from future harm. All of these things are very, very important. And the last one I'm going to talk about that it'll help with is for toxic family dynamics. So this says active healing here involves recognizing the unhealthy patterns and roles that you may have played within your family. It often means mourning the family you wished you had, setting boundaries with family members who are still toxic, and actively building a chosen family/support system that is truly healthy and supportive. It's about breaking generational cycles of trauma and dysfunction. And I think that's really important, to break the cycles of trauma and dysfunction, and, for most of the people that are doing this work, I would say they may be the first people, you may be the first person breaking the cycle within your family, if you've ever thought about that, right? For me, I know I am, because my mom, my dad never went to therapy. My grandparents never went to no committed type of therapy, so, nobody, I don't really know anybody in my life that like has went through therapy successfully, and then I seen a major change and was like, oh wow, let me do that. I got some family in therapy now, but honestly, I've been in therapy longer than they have. You know what I mean? So, if anybody's breaking the curse, it's gonna be me, and I'm proud to do that, because if I have any children, then I will be able to teach them certain things, like understanding and regulating their emotions, and being able to provide their own self-worth, and know who they are, and just so much important things that I didn't acquire as a child, and I'm not here to bash my parents for it, because they had their own issues, obviously. Obviously their upbringings weren't the healthiest either, so it's like, I'm not going to sit here and blame nobody, but at the end of the day, you are responsible at a certain level. Like once you become an adult, you're responsible for everything that happens in your life, so That's why I chose to start making the best decisions for my life, you know. But so yeah. Next we're gonna move on to why this video and plus my experience. We're gonna talk about that, right? So for me, the term active healing means a lot because it means that I'm actively engaging and changing previous learned behaviors, learning healthier ones, gaining knowledge, and provides me with a sense of self-comfort as well as a list of benefits. Like so many benefits that I could list. I'll be here till the end of the video, you know, if I listed them all. The key is to heal genuinely, you know. Check out my video on authentic versus superficial healing if you want a little more context on that, you know. Like I go into more detail and there's a lot of good information on there. And remember that healing is an ongoing process that requires active action and consistent practice. And one of the main reasons I made this video is because active healing is active. You know, it requires constant action, consistent practice over and over and over daily. Daily providing yourself with self-compassion, you know, daily demonstrating boundaries, you know, like just using these things on a daily basis. All right, so next I'm gonna cover some key points and unique information. I say this in all of my videos until you get it in your mind. I'm probably never gonna stop saying it, so just get used to it. It's not a linear path. It is more like a spiral, where you revisit similar themes or emotions, but from a higher, more evolved vantage point each time. You may have old memories or thoughts of an ex-partner or loved one where old feelings may resurface, but now you have the tools to process them in a healthy way, rather than being consumed by them. This is active healing in action right here. It just means that you're still doing the work. So when times, think of it like this, like when memories come up, when times come up, tearful moments, you know, maybe you need to cry it out, whether you're a man or a woman, that's okay. What I do is, like, when I feel the need to cry, I will allow myself to cry in a place where, you know, I have solitude and nobody's gonna like bother me, nobody's gonna see me crying, you know, it's just me to myself. The key is to allow yourself to feel your emotions, and allow yourself to be vulnerable, you know. I don't think that enough men in particular use this tool of crying when they feel like it. And I definitely understand society, right? I definitely understand how people view men that cry. I know how many women view men who cry, you know, and I understand that it's not attractive, you know what I mean? But I also understand that we're humans too, you know, we're not robots walking around here. We have feelings too, and feelings matter. They mean something, they're data, you know. So the key is to feel and understand your feelings and regulate your emotions in a healthy way. And, you know, whether that's allowing yourself to cry, journaling, talking to a trusted person, things like that. But yeah, I just want to kind of emphasize it is okay to cry. You know, I understand it, you know, not crying in front of your partner or whatever have you, you know, particularly if you're a guy, but, you know, there is a time and a place where you can allow yourself to go through those emotions, and you're gonna want to do that. All right, so I know I kind of went on like a little rant right there, but anyway, we're gonna keep it moving. So the next one is active healing requires courage, especially from toxic dynamics. It takes a lot of courage to look at the things that hurt you, especially when that pain came from people you loved or were supposed to trust, right? Which a lot of times it is. For survivors of narcissistic abuse or toxic family dynamics, Active healing often means seeing the illusion for what it is, like the narcissistic mask or the toxic relationship. And remember, facing your past is the bravest thing that you can do. So I just want to take the time to commend you all. Anybody that is brave enough, that has the courage to face their past and to really take this journey of self-healing and self-identity seriously. You know, I really want to take the time to commend you and say that I'm proud of you for that. Self-compassion is the fuel, not a reward. Active healing is fundamentally rooted in self-compassion. That's why I keep talking about it so much. This means treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and care you would offer a friend in a moment of struggle or regret. It's not about being soft or letting yourself off the hook. It's about creating a safe inner space for tough emotions. Remember to practice self-compassion daily, not just when you feel good or you feel like you deserve it. This is something to practice daily, because it's going to get you in the habit of doing this, and it's going to start to rewire your mind. All right, next we're going to touch on boundaries and why they are the blueprint for a new life. It's very serious. Active healing is expressed through the establishment and enforcement of healthy boundaries. For people from toxic backgrounds, boundaries were likely non-existent or violated constantly. Definitely for me, violated constantly, damn near non-existent, stuff like that. It's about rebuilding your personal architecture on a solid foundation. Remember, boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, but fences to keep your peace in. So that's a good way of looking at it. Make sure to set healthy boundaries with people in your life. I have a whole video about boundaries as well, so you could check that out. It'd be helpful to you guys. The next is going to be connecting the dots, trauma responses. Active healing involves understanding how past trauma manifests in your present behaviors, whether it's codependency, people-pleasing, perfectionism, hypervigilance, difficulty trusting, or even self-sabotage cycles, which I've literally went through I've had all of those before. It's about recognizing these patterns not as flaws, but as adaptations that once served a purpose, because that's true. At one point, they did serve a purpose. However, for whatever reason you were exhibiting these behaviors was a learned survival mechanism a lot of the times. They're learned behaviors that helped you in life. For this, use self-reflection and curiosity about your patterns without judgment. For example, you could ask yourself, why do I react this way? Or what is this trying to protect me from? Or what can I learn from this? What is this trying to tell me? Ask yourself questions as to why you are going through, why you're exhibiting certain behaviors. You know what I mean? Like, why are you acting in certain ways? Because 9 times out of 10, it was a learned behavior that helped you in life. Goal is to reframe your behaviors, so whatever it is that is a toxic behavior, it's about reframing it to a positive one, right? And how you're gonna go about changing that. So this stuff can get a little bit tricky, but as long as you stick to the script and learn what to do, then you'll be fine. So next we're going to talk about grief and how it is a necessary part of the process. Active healing from toxic dynamics often involves grieving. I know, sounds crazy, right? Sounds like a death. You could be grieving the childhood you didn't have or like, the healthy relationship you wished for, the trust that was broken, or even the illusion you once loved. This is a often important overlooked part of the journey right here. Understand that grieving is not just for death, right? This happens for a loss of any kind, and it's important to let it move through you. This can be past relationships, locations, careers, vehicles, homes, anything that was once a significant part of your life. You will more than likely go through a grievance period after, and even after you go through that period and you get better from that period, you will still have to battle with the memories, that come up, or for some people, rumination at a certain point in their process, so just understand that if you're grieving, it's okay to grieve. Allow yourself to grieve and feel those emotions to get through them. I'm gonna get into some skills that may benefit you for active healing. So I think I already basically gave like a lot of really good information and stuff that could really help you in the process of healing. But let's go over these skills, right? So the first one is going to be mindfulness and present moment awareness, right? So the skill that requires this is going to take requiring learning to observe the thoughts and feelings without judgment and bringing attention to the present moment. This helps break the cycle of rumination on the past or anxiety about the future. The benefit to this is it allows for emotional regulation, reduces overwhelm, and helps identify triggers in real time. Mindfulness and present moment awareness. It's really, really important, and it just looks like you just paying attention to your thoughts. I used to tell my uncle something and I could tell it stuck with him because he's mentioned it like after this too. And I told him at one point in my life, like right now, I have to think about what I'm thinking about. It fucking blew his mind, man. Like he was like, he's told me since then, like, it was, I thought about what you said, I got to think about what I'm thinking about. And that's true. Whatever your thoughts are, because a lot of times we have thoughts unconscious, like they're just like not unconsciously, but subconsciously. Like a thought will just pop into my head, like, ooh, I look kind of fat today, or whatever thought, you know what I mean? And it's like we have to think about what we're thinking about in order to reframe our thoughts and change the way that change the cognitive structure in our mind, right? Honestly, I could make a whole video just on that, just on thinking what you think about and changing what you think about, right? But we're gonna move on. The next one is going to be emotional literacy and expression. So the skill for this requires developing a wider vocabulary for emotions and learning to identify what you're feeling, where you feel it in your body, and then finding healthy ways to express it, like journaling, talking to a trusted person, crying, creative outlets, therapy, distraction, exercise, etc. I kind of talked about that already, so I'm not going to go in too deep about that. I also have a whole video about emotional intelligence that has a lot of like pretty interesting information on that too. So if you want to know more about that. So next we're going to talk about journaling. This skill requires consistent, honest journaling as a tool for self-reflection, processing thoughts, and tracking patterns, and releasing emotions. The benefit is that it provides a safe space for unfiltered thoughts, helps identify triggers, and tracks healing progress over time. And it for sure does that stuff, because I use my journal for that too. Every now and then I'll look back at some months ago or a year ago, and I can see my mindset, my mentality at that time, and then I can flip the page or get in a whole nother book, and then I'm like, oh wow, look at my mentality today, and how much it's changed. So it is pretty cool to see, because a lot of times I would wonder, like, is this stuff working? Like, how do I know if how do I know if I'm actually changing, right? And the journal is a great way to track your progress. You can check and see where your mentality is by dates. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about boundary setting, verbal and nonverbal. So this skill requires practicing how to clearly communicate limits and enforce them with conviction. This includes learning to say no, limiting or ending contact with toxic people, and prioritizing your own needs first. The benefit to this protects mental and emotional energy, builds self-respect, and teaches others how to treat you. Very important. Like, the boundaries are very important. All this stuff that's very important, I have their own videos on them because they're so important, and I wanted to dial in detail with most of these things. Last one we're going to talk about is, or there's two more, all right? So this one is seeking professional support. You guys already know about that. This skill requires recognizing when you need external professional help and actively seeking out qualified therapists, counselors, and support groups. The benefit of this provides a safe, objective space for deep work, offers professional guidance, and introduces tailored therapeutic techniques. You will learn these techniques in therapy. This right here is important because you will have professional help from somebody that tailors their assistance for your specific needs. So that's very important. You're not just talking to a random family member that is not a professional, right? The last one, self-parenting inner child work. This skill requires learning to provide yourself with the love, comfort, validation, and protection that you may have not got as a child. This involves recognizing the needs of your inner child and tending to them. The benefit of this heals old wounds, builds internal security, and fosters a deep sense of self-reliance and love. Self-parenting the inner child is such a big deal, and it's definitely something that deserves its own topic as well. But this is just a brief video explaining, what the process is going to look like, and as far as active healing goes. Self-parenting the inner child, that work is going to be, it may be a little bit difficult, you know what I mean? It's going to take some digging and looking back into your past traumas and see, what needs to be healed in regarding your inner child. And I would more preferably go over this in therapy, and there's different things you can do. Like, for me, I wrote letters to myself, I wrote letters to my ex-girlfriend, I wrote one to my mom. So I never gave them to them, I just wrote how I felt in the letters, right? And it did help me, it did validate me, and it did make me feel better. Like I got it out of me, And there's a whole lot of other things you could learn in therapy. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a mental health professional, I'm just a survivor. And you could look at me as like somebody who is just a fellow person on the journey, So I hope that you guys really enjoyed this video. I hope that you guys are enjoying my content. I got my first comment yesterday on the video that I just uploaded. So shout out to you, man, whoever you are. I really appreciate that comment. If you made it here, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel. I'm providing as much information and beneficial, like just resourceful information that I can provide, because I want to help people out there that are going through this. I know how bad it is to go through this type of stuff. I know how shattering it can be, but I want you to know that there is hope, there's healing, and there is recovery. I will see you guys soon. Stay tuned. I drop videos every single day. And yeah, I hope you guys are taking care of your guys' selves. practicing radical self-care, self-compassion, self-love, and all of that. You know, eating nutritious meals, exercising daily, and taking care of yourself on this path to healing and finding yourself. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.